Woo! Welcome back to the MANN channel.
Okay, so today's video is going to be the 19th edition to the Wakeboat Ownership Series. And before we get started, I just want to let you know that if you're interested in supporting the channel, you can head on over to wakeman.com and check out all kinds of merch I have available, like this hat. Alright, so I'm excited to announce that in this video, I'm going to be meeting with a new friend of mine named Drew, and he has a very cool wakeboat comparison tool that he's built. I think the tool that he came up with is an incredible tool and is going to be very helpful for those people who are trying to decide which boat they should buy. For those of you who want to reach out to Drew during this video or after this video, I'm going to go ahead and leave his information in the description below, and I'll also provide that again later in the video. I'm currently filming the intro to this video during the day. I'm going to meet with him via Zoom this evening, but luckily due to the magic of film, you get to see that right now. Okay, so now I am on a Zoom meeting with Drew, and Drew is a passionate surfer who's developed a love for boating with his family and friends. And over the winter, while he cannot surf, he's decided to put his passion for analysis together with his passion for surfing and being on his boat. And he's come up with a very cool wakeboat comparison tool that he's going to share with us. So Drew, welcome to the channel, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. It's a pleasure to be on the MANN channel. Really appreciate this opportunity because even though the lake in my background looks nice, right now it's frozen. And so like you said, I can't boat and I kind of go stir crazy. So you're right. What I've been doing is basically started just blogging on Facebook about some of my boat thoughts, and turned into gathering a bunch of data and trying to make some graphs and some comparison tools that hopefully will help other boat shoppers and boat lovers compare boats and, you know, hopefully make your decision on what to buy and what's best for you.
All right, well, that sounds cool, Drew. Let's see this tool you've got.
Okay, so as wakeboaters, everybody is always seeking for the bigger and longer wave, right? It's more fun and it's cool, so we want the biggest and best. So there are some surf studies out there, and you know, typically they've actually been sponsored by the manufacturers who seem to do the best in the studies. And so I wanted to try to come up with an easy way to compare boats and, you know, compare like what the wave might be like compared to another boat that was just simple, visually appealing, and like easy to read, and then also unbiased. And of course, all you wake surfers out there who have boats, you've probably heard the term, there's no replacement for displacement. And what that means is the more weight, the more that your boat goes down in the water, you know, the more water it displaces, the bigger and the longer wave that you can get. And so I consider three factors, 1, 2, 3, when it comes to your boat displacement. So number one, obviously, is the weight of your boat, like the hull, the engine, the seats, the tower, like the basics. Then number two would be your stock ballast. So you got hard tanks, you might have some soft bags on top of that, all your stock ballast. And then third and finally would be your passenger weight. So the rating that's on the label on the side of the boat as to how many people, how much weight of fuel you can put in, as well as, you know, your gear. And then of course, if you're not at the max level, you might want to add some more ballast, either lead weight or some soft bags. And what those three sum up to, the dry weight plus the stock ballast plus your safety rating, is what I call the safety rated displacement. So this is really the max that you should put in your boat, so you're safe, but also so that you can create the biggest, longest wave that you can possibly get out of your boat. Let's be honest with ourselves. There's a lot of other factors that are going to go into what the wave shape and size look like. So you're talking surf systems, hull shape, weight distribution, even how your ballast or your people are spread out in the boat is obviously going to affect the look of your wave and how much push is behind it. And, like if you're like me, I usually go out with my family. Well, that's not near the capacity of most new wake boats. And so, I would love to have a little extra ballast in there, right, to get me to the max level if at all possible. So taking all these other factors into consideration, though, it's hard to compare because, of course, none of the manufacturers are have the same surf systems or the exact same hull shape, obviously, right? So it's kind of hard to compare some of those. So I'll talk a little bit about that more later. But the three factors that I talked about that add up to your whole displacement number, they're all available from the manufacturers right off their websites. And so it's a good starting point to start to compare the boats. All right, so Tim, now I'm ready. I'd like to show your viewers one of the graphs that we came up with for the 23-foot luxury boat, what we consider luxury manufacturers, anyway, luxury manufacturers in the 23-foot boat segment. And I'll show you the graph that compares the boats to each other. Okay, so you're able to see the background of my graphs here now. So you can see that we're comparing 23-foot boats. So just so you know, if it's like 23 and a half, it actually rounds up to a 24-foot in my categories. Okay, so just so you know, and then if it's 22 and a half, it'll round into this 23-foot category. But we've taken what we consider the luxury manufacturers and put all their 23-foot boats on here. So you can see at the bottom of the screen, you've got the Centurion, some Malibus, a couple of Mastercrafts, some Nautiques, a Supra, and 3 Taigas. Okay, so remember we're looking at displacement in terms of performance. All right, so where do we start? Well, we start with the dry weight. So I'm going to show up the dry weight here. And you can see that, boom, the Nautique P23, the Paragon, is the heaviest boat. So right off the bat, it's got a lot of displacement. Next up is your stock ballast. So again, this is stock ballast, hard tanks, soft bags. If it's Malibu, it includes the wedge. So that's your max stock ballast. So what you'll want to notice here on the ballast points is with the ballast plus the dry weight, a lot of these boats start to get almost or past the 10,000 pound of displacement mark. All right, if you read across on the graph to the axis on the left, you can see that. Another thing you can see here is, some of the boats are the dry weight's heavier with less ballast, and some are, lighter but with more ballast. So it's sometimes they kind of trade off a bit. All right, so third and finally, the number that adds up to the total safety displacement is your passenger capacity. So you can actually see that it's fairly even, like between 2,100 pounds at the lowest and 2,500 pounds at the most. And of course, that would represent about 14 to 16 people. All these boats are rated for about 14 to 16 people. All right, so what you're seeing now is that with the dry weight, the ballast weight, and the passenger capacity, that some of these boats are pushing over 12,000 pounds displacement, which compared to my old boat, which you might be able to see in my background, that's like double what it ever does. And it's over the safety rated capacity. So these waves are big, obviously, from a lot of these boats. Let me point out a few cool things that I derived from being able to look at the graph like this. Okay, so first thing I'd like to point out, let's look at the Mastercraft XT23. So you note its overall displacement is kind of lower on the list compared to some of the other boats, and there's a good reason for that. The XT23 is designed as a crossover boat, so it's also meant to ski. So somewhere, in their decisions about what it would do, they had to make a decision about how much it would weigh and what kind of ballast you could put in it so that it would also ski reasonably well. Obviously, we're not pointing out any differences in the boats here, like with respect to fuel economy, right? So all these boats might have different fuel economy. Maybe that's an important factor to you. We're not showing the price yet, so we'll get to that, but we're not really be able to compare like the boat's reliability or quality or perceived resale value. But again, we'll get back to that money aspect of it in a little bit here. So another point that I think is cool personally for me, because I got a smaller-ish, older SUV, I can't tow, the Paragon, even though I'd love to. I mean, I probably couldn't even tow the trailer for goodness sake. But I might look at the FI23 from Centurion, or the 23 LSV, or even an XT23, because I could tow it, and then specifically the 23 LSV and the FI23. Well, they got tons of ballast, right? So I kind of make up for that lack of dry weight that I'd be missing, and still allow me to tow the boat. All right, so let's say you've used some of these graphs and these visual representations to narrow it down to a couple boats that you're really interested in. Or maybe, you're still looking at a few because, well, you can spend whatever you want to spend on it. So I did my best to gather MSRP or starting costs on as many boats as I could, as many wake boats. So like I said, I tried to do my best. Some of the stuff comes from the manufacturer's website. Some of it's from some other reasonable sources that I think are reasonable anyway. And but take them with a grain of salt, because they're not going to be perfect, and they're certainly probably not going to be what you're seeing at the dealer. Okay, but also stay tuned on that point, because I'm going to show you how to do some calcs with the dealer information, like the dealer pricing. Okay, ready? So I'm going to show you the MSRP numbers for these boats. All right, so you can see them on screen here in green. You can see, boom, the Paragon's right at the top. It's one of the most luxurious boats on the market, if not the most luxurious. And then, of course, you've got most of the other ones. I mean, they look pretty close, but still some of them, just because of the scale, they actually are quite a bit lower. At the bottom on the right, you can see the Taiga Z3. Starting price on the website was about 100K US. Now, as you look at the pricing, obviously you might consider like what kind of value you're going to get. In other words, from based on the displacement and then the cost, what sort of value there is in the boat. So we're going to talk a little bit about performance cost ratio later, because I've got another cool tool to help you evaluate that. But let's remember that, again, that this doesn't take into account the cost of options and other things, like maybe a warranty or extended warranty that you can get. And other factors that you want to consider. We already talked about surf system and fuel economy and all that stuff, but you might also want to consider, like, whether this dealer is hours away or if this one's really close, right? And what is that worth to you, right? So essentially what I'm trying to say is these graphs are really just a good starting point to narrow down your search and, make it real quick and easy for you to compare some boats, and start to make, decisions as to what you're going to seriously look at, maybe which ones you want to actually lake test. So obviously what we're showing you here on screen today is only the luxury manufacturer 23-foot boats. We haven't taken into account value brands, or obviously there's lots of other sizes, bigger and smaller. So Tim, what I'd like to do is make this information available to your viewers, and some of my other tools as well.
Yeah, Drew, that sounds great. I think this chart is a really great starting place. You made a lot of really good points. Some of the things I'm going to be thinking about is like hull design and differences in hull design. So obviously, like you said, this tool is not going to be the end all be all decision, but it's going to give a really good starting place so that you can decipher between certain brands or certain models of boats. And then take your other factors into consideration along with that.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Tim. So exactly, let's show everybody my next tool, because the next tool will really help you once you've narrowed your search down to like 2 or 3 boats. All right, folks. So here's the really nerdy tool. So put on your life vests. This might get a little crazy. All right, so I want to introduce you to the 2-boat comparison tool. So I'll just walk you through some of the headers, and we'll get into the meat of it and start comparing a couple boats in a minute here. So on the screen, you'll be able to see on the top left column, we've got boat 1 and 2. So we're going to select in these pull downs a brand and then a model, and it'll pull up the year, the length category, and then remember that we're trying to compare performance in terms of displacement to cost. And so we're starting off here with the dry weight. It's going to show the dry weight of both boats, then the stock ballast, then the weight capacity, and then it's going to sum them all up and give you that total or safety rated displacement for the boat if it's at full capacity. So this next column here is where you would enter your cost once you start negotiating with the dealer. Then I'm going to do a calculation to show how many pounds you're getting for every $1,000 you're spending. And then if I've got an MSRP for the boat, it'll show up in this column. And then finally, again, how many pounds of displacement you're getting for every $1,000 you're spending. All right, so and this last column is displacement per foot. So it's basically just your total safety rated displacement divided by the length of the boat. And what you'll notice is once you start using the tool is usually the newer wake boats, even a 21 footer, will have more displacement per foot than even the longer boats. Basically, they're just jamming a bunch of ballast in there, so you'll probably get a really tall wave, maybe not as long, but a really tall wave in a small package. All right, so as I developed this tool, I found a couple really cool examples that we want to walk you through to not only show you how it works, but the kind of cool information that you can figure out as using the tool. So our first example here, we're going to go over to boat one, and this is what everything's going to be compared against. So we're going to select the Axis A24. It's a big boat. Sounds like a really cool boat, and you can see it's pulled across its data values here. And we're going to compare it to the Mastercraft NXT 24. So we are comparing two value brand boats, both of the same length. All right, so let's walk through it here. So the dry weight for the Axis is 500 pounds more than the Mastercraft. In other words, 10%. That's what we're showing in these bottom cells here. The stock ballast, including the wedge, of course, on the A24 is 2,720 pounds. So 2,720 pounds more than the Mastercraft. That's huge. And then you add the weight capacity. The Axis also has a little bit more weight capacity, 288 pounds or 13%. And as you sum them all up and compare, the A24 has 3,508 pounds more displacement overall. And that equates to 35%. So it's essentially 35% more displacement or performance. Now, the information that I got on MSRP for these two boats is in this column over here. So the A24, I got 84,000 some, and the Mastercraft 83.9. So only $369 more for the A24. So that's 0.4% of the cost. So it's really not much more. Okay, so now I'd like to highlight for you the next two tools that are in here. The first one is in green, which talks about the performance to cost ratio based on the MSRP cost. And then if you've got the dealer price or your own price of some sort, in the purple section, you've got the ability to compare performance to cost margin based on what costs you have gotten from the dealer or somebody you're buying these boats from. So let's go down to this green section at the bottom here. So again, we're comparing boat one, which is the A24, to the boat two, which is the NXT 24. This tool is going to take the difference between the displacement, which the A24 had 35% more displacement than the NXT 24, and compare it to the difference of the MSRP. So the A24 was 0.4% more cost. Okay, so if you take those two numbers, you go down to this cell here, you've got a 35.2% difference between the displacement and the cost, right? So in other words, if you read this line below in gray here, you get 35.6% more performance or displacement, which again comes from this cell up here about the A24 having that much more displacement, for only 0.4% more cost. So when I first saw this, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, well, I should get an A24 if I wanted to buy one, or versus an NXT 24, because I'm getting way more performance for my money. Yeah, so I was just blown away. Okay, so clearly you'd think from the data that, bam, well, I should just go with an A24 because I'm getting way more performance for my money. Well, that's probably true in this case because it seems that like the difference is so big. Now, of course, that's assuming that the price difference is so little, like it shows here on the MSRP. But, as I was saying earlier, maybe the Mastercraft dealer is local and the dealer is like, in the next state over or 3 states over. Or, maybe you're really thinking like, well, I feel like the build quality of the Mastercraft is different from the Axis, and that's worth, losing 35% performance for me, you know. Or maybe you get out and test these boats and you're like, you know what, the wave on the Mastercraft is great. Uh, and so I'm not, maybe the XSA 24 is better, but it's not worth it to me or whatever reason. I'm gonna be okay with the Mastercraft. So anyway, those are just the kind of things that you're going to take into consideration that go beyond the numbers, but the numbers can help you really see what you're getting and what you're not getting, especially in terms of value. We've been using MSRP numbers. So now let's try using a cost. Like let's say you've gone to a dealer, like obviously a couple of dealers, an Axis and a Mastercraft, and you've got some actual pricing. So you would go to these cells in the tool and enter those values. So let's say the Mastercraft, it had some options. It was more than the MSRP. Let's say it was 95,000. And let's say your Mastercraft, well, it also had some options that were above the MSRP, but the asking price, what they wanted was 90,000. Okay, so now you're 5.6% difference in price. So now you go down to the purple section here that I'm highlighting, and again, it's always comparing the first boat, the A24, to the second boat, the NXT 24. So obviously the displacement numbers haven't changed. So you're still getting 35.6% more performance, but now you're paying 5.6% more cost. So if you look at the difference there, your performance to cost margin is 30% versus the MSRP was 35. So now you might want to even take some of this information, or maybe you can negotiate with your dealer and maybe you get them down to like a crazy good deal on the Mastercraft at 80,000, and maybe say, you really like this dealer, or you've got a relationship with them, you want to stick with Mastercraft, and you get a really good deal. Well, now you look at the numbers, and now you've got it down to only a 16% performance to cost margin difference. So maybe that's enough to swing you to say, yeah, you know what, I'm willing to stick with the Mastercraft because my dealer's close by, or some other, aspect that isn't as simple as the numbers. So there you go. That's how you can use the tool to enter your own costs and do your evaluation on what boat really gives you a better bang for your buck. Okay, so let's walk through another example. We'll go a little bit quicker this time, and we'll compare some luxury brand boats and see what the tool can tell us. So let's pick a Supra. Supra just came out with a revised model of the SA. It's a 22-foot boat. And let's pick the Malibu, which also came out with the new M220. All right, so we'll just go down to the differences here. So the Supra is 400 pounds less dry weight, 1660 pounds less stock ballast, but it has 85 pounds more weight capacity. And if you kind of summarize that all up in terms of total displacement, the Supra has almost 2,000 pounds less, 1975 pounds less of overall displacement than the Malibu M220, which is 14.7%. Now, if we go over to the MSRP section, you'll see that the Supra SA is 6,500 bucks more than the M220, and that's about 4.8%. So going down here to figure out the performance to cost margin, you're looking at 19.4%, which is, in other words, 14.7% less performance for 4.8% more cost. So again, that might lead you to think about, well, maybe I should consider the Malibu because I'd get more performance and it might actually be cheaper. So again, you could enter your cost here and then go to this section down here, and you'd be able to figure out, based on the actual costs that you're getting at the dealers, what kind of value, what kind of performance to cost margin you see on these two boats. All right, so let's say you get dealer pricing in the Super SA, it's about $145,499, and the M220 is $149,999. So $4,500 difference. All right, so in this case, the SA would be 14.7% less difference, but it's also 3% less cost. So, what we could do is we could actually turn these around. Maybe you're like, well, I want to see what that number looks like from the Malibu's perspective. So you could change this to the opposite. So the M220 is on top. I'm going to quickly switch these numbers around. So we got the same $4,500 difference. So compared to the MSRP numbers, this might swing your vote. So you get 17.2% more performance in the Malibu, the M220, for only 3.1% more cost. So in that case, maybe you swing with the M220, which is a really cool new boat.
Wow, Drew, that is an amazing tool, and I'm very happy that you've spent so much time putting that together. I already feel much more informed for doing my own wakeboat comparisons. So thanks for coming on my channel.
Thanks so much, Tim. It's been a pleasure to be on the WakeMan channel. Hope all your viewers love it. Tim's going to post my contact info here or here, and feel free to reach out. I'd love to share my tools with you and to help you in your boat comparisons. So yeah, looking forward to talking to you all soon.
All right, so Drew and I had a fun time filming this video, and I hope the information that Drew has provided helps you. Obviously, you can contact him directly at the information provided on the screen right now, and he can work with you on very specific scenarios. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have any thoughts on this video or ideas for future videos, please leave them in the comments below. And if you are new to this channel, please subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you can be notified of my future videos. I'll see you next week.